Well, my responsibility is not just transport, it's also environment as well, and I think the two of them work very well together.
And next year, it looks to me as if you're going to have a bit of a fight on your hands. So how do you prioritise what you're spending money on?
Well, I think we're in a very difficult position in terms of the budget looking forward to next year and for the next 3 years, where we have less money, more services to be provided. We've got more homes, more people living in the city. We've got an increase in population. We've got more elderly people, younger people. So the strain on the services is in the next few years is likely to get even more challenging for us as a council. So what we need to look at is where we can perhaps increase charges to bring extra income in, but also where we can be more efficient in our service. And for example, the more that we can invest in our active travel, whether that be cycling and walking, then the more and more people using public transport, then our air quality gets better, and that obviously has an effect on health, but also means it has an effect on the economy of our city as well. So we need to look also at frontline services, the services that people get in, day out, whether that's the rubbish collection and whether that's a recycling collection. We need to look at ways that we can protect the frontline services as much as we can in the coming years. If we look at the environment budget and look just one small part of it, which is how we've invested in recycling throughout the city, whether that be if you live in a main door house or you live in a tenemental house, we've invested in our recycling, and also we're building a new recycling centre for food out at Miller Hill. So we're looking at investing capital to save us in revenue. Year on year, the increase in terms of landfill tax will go up dramatically, and it will cost us more and more money. So the more that we can recycle, then the less we have to send to landfill, and the less it costs us as all council taxpayer. But obviously, importantly as well, it's also about the environment and saving the planet. So there's just one small example of an investment, whether it be in revenue or capital, which will save us money in the coming years.
You do have people who tell you all the time that you have done the wrong thing by bringing trams to the city, and that the trams are costing a fortune, and that's making a dent in the council's budget. So perhaps you could allay some of those fears now by telling us what the position really is.
Well, the key for me is how we can invest in public transport, whether that be in our bus fleet, whether that be in our tram system, whether that be in our active travel, whether it's cycling and walking. We cannot survive as a city in the years coming if we don't invest in our public transport, invest in our active travel. We can't continue to have more and more cars coming into the city centre. We've got a growing population, a growing economy, it's thriving, and we want to live also in an area which has got clean air. So therefore the long-term investment in public transport has to be a priority for this council. We can't just think about 1 year, 2 years. We need to think about the next 5 years. We need to think about the next 10, 15, 20 years, and how we as a city invest in the infrastructure and invest in our public transport, our walking and our cycling. And tram is a part of that. Tram was originally proposed for the regeneration of Leith to bring jobs and to bring housing into Leith. And that was a fundamental reason for trams to put the infrastructure in, and for it also to encourage what we'd call modal shift. People who would never get on a bus, but will get out of their car and go on a tram. And what we've seen is a highly successful last year. More people are using trams than we expected, and more importantly, there are more people using buses as well. So what we have in this city is an increase in use of public transport, unlike the other cities in Scotland, and we also have more people walking and more people cycling, and that's because we've looked at the future investment, and we've looked at investment in capital and revenue, and we're looking long term. So for me, the tram doesn't sit out on its own, it's part of an overall strategy as we go forward to invest in our infrastructure in our city as we become a more successful and a growing city.
And one of the things you're going to be discussing in the early part of 2016 is the proposals to change parking in the city.
Yep. What we have is people who have parking permits, residence parking permits, and almost a year and a half, if not 2 years ago, we circulated to all the residents throughout the city, asked their review, what they thought of the system, and this proposal is actually to enhance and to actually create more spaces by having shared use, but also using some of the yellow lines to create some spaces for parking permits as well. And of course we want people to less people to have cars in the city and to have less journeys. But this proposal is very much about increasing the number of parking permits for residents, and is what they're looking for, and hopefully the residents will see that. They were suggesting and putting forward they wanted an increase in the evening, so they'd be able to come home and they'd be able to use the residents' parking permit to be able to get a space at the moment they can. And also on a Sunday, you only have to come in the city on a Sunday where there's no restriction, and the chaos there is in terms of parking along Queen Street, buses can't get past, and the city almost comes to a halt on certain times during a Sunday. But what we need to do is to invest in our public transport so there is a choice for people, so they can get on a bus, they can get a tram, they can walk and they can cycle, and that's making sure it's a good quality, affordable choice for the people who either live in the city, work or come to visit the city.
My final question is that transport and environment do have to spend a lot of money, but it seems that you have a lot of ways of making the money you're then going to spend. Is your department sort of unique in that?
Probably throughout the council, in terms of parking revenue and other ways that we can raise money, then often it's just seen as a simple way. Well, we'll just put up parking charges, and I don't think it should be seen like that. We want to get to a level that doesn't put off people to come into our city, but we also are providing park and ride. So there's an alternative for people as well, and that's been very successful, particularly when the tram's been brought in, but also out to other areas which are encouraging that. So yes, as a department and as the service providers, then there is more opportunities to raise funding through parking, etc. Other ways that we can do that. We'll be listening to what the public are saying about the levels, about the increases we're considering, but also it's all as conveners having more efficient services and prioritising how we deliver services at the front line and protect the frontline services, because that's what people in the city want. They want to have good quality, efficient services, and that's what we're striving to do with the budget that we're putting forward under the constraints of the finances that we have at the moment.